let us proceed with Clause 6, Material, Goods, Workmanship to conform to descriptions, testing and inspection. This is quite an important section which is related to the quality of the materials, goods as well as the workmanship as per the requirement by the contract document. In the case that the contractor is unable to fulfill the requirement, there will be consequences. This clause also outlines the functions and the rights of the architect in carrying out his duty to ensure the works are delivered in accordance to the standard as stated in the contract document. In total, there are 8 subclauses. Within some of the subclauses, there are subcomponents. The statements are given here. For the full sentences, you may refer to the PEN Contract 2018. This slide simplifies the informations based on the statements given in the PEN Contract 2018. First, we talk about the standards of the work, material, goods and workmanship. It is stated that all the work, material, goods and workmanship must comply with the quality and standard as per described in the contract document. The quality must also meet the expectations of the architect based on the provisions of the contract. In another word, it is the obligations of the contractor to deliver the work in accordance to the requirement as per stated in the contract document. The contractor cannot provide substandard material or give poor workmanship not meeting the requirement. There will be consequences if the contractor deliberately reduces the quality of the work, and we're going to discuss about this in detail later. The architect has the right to request for the information regarding the material to be given or supplied by the contractor, where the contractor will need to provide the architect the relevant vouchers or evidence of the materials that are to be supplied in order to prove the qualities of the materials and goods complying to the requirements as per the contract document. When it is requested by the architect, the contractor will need to provide those informations. The architect may also request the contractor to provide samples of the materials and goods for testing before incorporating into the work. Again, upon the request of the architect, the contractor will have to comply. Let's say now the work has been done. The architect can also issue an architect instructions requiring the contractor to open out the work that has already been covered up for inspection purposes, or to carry out any testing on any materials which has already been incorporated in the work or any executed work. That means the architect has the right to request from the contractor. First is the information of the materials to be supplied. Upon request, the contractor will need to provide, or the architect may request for samples of the material to be tested before incorporating into the work. Upon request, the contractor will need to supply also. The architect may also request for the testing or inspections even though those materials has already been incorporated into the work. This might lead to the opening up of the works which has already been covered and the relevant costs for the inspection work and making good of damages that has been made onto the work due to the request for inspections or testing. It will be dependent on whether the contractor is supplying the materials meeting the standards of the contract document. If the contractor is supplying the materials up to the standard, the workmanship is also okay, meeting the requirement. Now the cost of the testing and cost of making good of those as a result of the inspections and testing, it will be claimable as added to the contract sum. That means the contractor is doing nothing wrong, meeting the requirement, and the contractor has valid reason to claim for this additional work and the cost. Let's say now if the works provided by the contractor does not meet the requirements, this cost will be borne by the contractor. That is the general principles. These are the circumstances where the cost of the testing or making good of the inspection work when those material has already been incorporated in the work. First, the inspections or test shows the works and materials are not in accordance to the contract. Now this is the problem of the contractor, and the contractor will have to bear the cost. Second, the inspections or tests was in opinion of the architect required in consequences of some prior negligence, omissions, defaults or breach of contract by the contractor. Then this cost will be borne by the contractor. The reason being here is the contractors have precedences that leads to reasonable doubt of the architect, or the contractor have demonstrated some prior negligence, omissions, defaults or breach of the contract in some other part, which is likely lead to the consequences of the parts that to be inspected and tested not meeting the requirement. Even though the tested outcome may be positive, that the materials are meeting the requirement, however, due to the reasonable doubt or due to the high chance of consequences as a result of the relevant negligence or omissions or defaults, it is also not claimable by the contractor. Another conditions when it is not claimable, it is because the cost has already been provided in the contract bills. That means the relevant cost of the testing has already been counted during the tendering process as well as during the formations of the contract. Under such circumstances, the relevant costs cannot be double counted, and therefore the costs are not to be added with the contract sum. In the case that the cost is not claimable by the contractor, the contract sum will remain the same. It is only when the cost is claimable, then the relevant cost will be added to the contract sum. What you see here, the principles for the contractor to be entitled for the claiming of the cost for the testing and making good when the things has already been incorporated in the work. It is very much dependent on the quality of the work as per given by the contractor. If the quality is okay, it is claimable, but you will need to check whether the cost has already been counted in the contract bills. If it is already counted, then it will not subjected to change in terms of the contract sum. If it is not counted, it is valid for the contractor to claim for the cost. When the inspection's outcome shows that the materials are substandard, the cost will have to be borne by the contractor. Or when the architects have reasonable doubt related to the honesty or the competency of the contractor, that means the contractors have bad reputations, bad track record, or have precedences, making the request by the architect to be justifiable. It is regardless whether the outcome is positive or negative, the cost will be borne by the contractor. Next, if the works is found not in accordance to the contract, the architect can instruct the contractors in writing any of the following. The instructions needs to be in writing. This is to document the entire process so that non-compliance of the work by the contractor is traceable. These are some possible instructions that the architect can give. To remove from or not to bring the materials to the site. That means the things is totally being rejected. If it is already on site, it should be removed from the site. Or if it is on the way, not yet reaching to the site, it is forbidden from entering the site. If the material has already been incorporated into the work, the architect may request for demolitions and reconstructions of the relevant work in order to comply with the standards of the contract. This is when the entire thing is rejected, totally not acceptable, or unable to be rectified. That means the entire thing needs to be reconstructed. Or the architect may request to rectify the work as instructed by the architect without any adjustment to the contract sum. In another word, the cost of the rectification works, it will be paid by the contractor. Or the architect may ask for method statement from the contractor, giving the contractor the flexibility how the contractor intend to rectify it so that the entire thing meets the requirement. Method statement is the descriptions or the procedures stating how the contractor intend to rectify it. This will be vetted by the architect whether the proposed method statement is workable or acceptable, and this is subjected to the acceptance by the architect. The duration is less than 7 days for the contractors to come up with the method statement. After the method statement is being submitted to the architect will look into the method statement. If the method statement is accepted by the architect, the contractor should carry out the rectification works with no adjustment to the contract sum in accordance to the method statement given. Let's say now if the method statement is rejected by the architect, that means the proposed solutions by the contractor is rejected, which in the perceptions of the architect, it is either not workable or not satisfying. The architect has the right to reject it, and then architect will issue written instructions on how the works are being rectified. The contractor will have to comply with it. Under these circumstances, when the method statement is being requested, that means the architect is giving flexibility to the contractor to decide the solutions as preferred by the contractor. This will require the approval or acceptance of the architect. If it does not satisfy the architect will give instructions so that the rectification works, it will be in accordance to the methods given by the architect. Another possible outcome is that architect asks to leave the relevant works. That means the contractor do not need to rectify it, just leave it as it is, and this is subjected to appropriate set-off by the employer under clause 30.4. That means the contractor are allowed not to rectify it, and they will be set off by the employer, either to compensate the loss by the employer, or the relevant cost is used for the employer to hire somebody else to rectify it. This will be with the consent of the employer, and whichever outcome it is, the contractor shall be fully liable. In the case that the work is done not in accordance to the contract, which is under clause 6.5, the contractor is not entitled with the extension of time and also the compensations of any losses or expenses that may incur. there is no ground for the contractor to request for the extension of time or the compensations due to its own default, either intentionally or unintentionally, and the contractor will be fully liable on this. In order to trigger this, there must be written instructions justifying the case or indicating that the work is not in accordance to the contract. They shall keep a record for the architect in the case that the contractor would like to challenge the architect when not granting the extension of time or not providing compensations for the loss and expenses related to the relevant work. Failure of contractors to comply. If the contractor fails to comply with the written instructions under Clause 6.5, Clause 6.5 are the instructions given by the architect, which can be either of these, either to remove from or not to bring the relevant materials to the site, to demolish or reconstruct relevant works, to ratify the works, or to submit the method statement for ratification works, and even to leave the work as it is. And when these instructions is given by the architect, the contractor should have to comply. However, if the contractor fails to comply, the employer may employ or pay other persons to do the work. As a result, all the costs related to those work shall be set off by the employer under Clause 30.4. That means eventually, this cost will be charged to the contractor. The relevant amount of money shall be deducted from the payments to the contractor in future. Warranty in respect of the materials and goods. This one is also under the liability of the contractor, especially when it is specified in the contract, requiring a warranty or any proprietary system, material, goods supplied. The contractor need to procure and submit to the employer. Having this done by the contractor is still liable for those things by definitions of the contract. You know that this warranties is given by the manufacturers or subcontractors or the supplier. It is mainly catered for the quality of the materials or the system. However, the nature of the project as executed by the contractor involve installations and setting out of the relevant materials incorporated together with the building. Normally, this warranty as provided by the manufacturers involve the system alone. It doesn't go beyond the system or the material which is being supplied, and therefore the contractor will have to be liable for the functionality and efficiency for the entire system as incorporated together with the building. As a result, even though the contractors has submitted the warranties handed over to the employer, it doesn't relieve the contractors from any liability under the contract.